Hi, welcome to the Best Ever You Global Summit. I'm Elizabeth Hamilton-Guarino here with Chris Fuller, and we're incredibly honored to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Ivan Misner. Dr. Ivan Misner is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, the world's largest business networking organization. Founded in 1985, the organization now has over 10,000 chapters throughout every populated continent of the world. Last year alone, BNI generated 11.5 million referrals, resulting in $16.3 billion worth of business for its members. Among his many awards, he has been named Humanitarian of the Year by the Red Cross and has been the recipient of the John C. Maxwell Leadership Award. Please welcome Dr. Ivan Misner.
Hi, it's Chris and Elizabeth. Welcome back to our Global Summit. We are here on day 3.
Welcome, Dr. Ivan Misner. Dr. Ivan Misner is the father of modern networking and the founder of BNI. We're so excited that you're here with us, Ivan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And yes, please call me Ivan. And you know what? I'm just glad they're not calling me the grandfather of modern networking yet. That's
when they call me the grandma of Best Ever You, I'm done.
Yeah.
Goes over to Chris. I hear you. So anyway, thank you so much for being with us. And I would love to just start out by hearing a little bit from you about you, like how you got started with BNI. There's a story there.
Well, there's definitely a story there. I'd like to tell you that I had this vision of an international organization with, groups all over the world. But the truth is, I was just looking for referrals for my consulting practice. I was a management consultant. And I put together people I trusted, and they trusted me, and we met, and we took only one person per profession. And so we started passing referrals to each other. Someone came very, very early into the organization, like the second month. And she said, "This is incredible. I could get a ton of business. Would you help me open up my own chapter?" And I actually told her no. I said, "No, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. I don't run networks." And she said, "Well, this is kind of consulting. This is helping me build my business." I'm like, "That's a stretch, but okay." So I did it. And fast forward the end of the year, we had 20 chapters. Where people just kept asking, "Would you help me open up a group? Would you help me open a group?" And it was at that point that I sat back, and I always take around the Christmas, New Year's time to reflect, to look, where do I want to be in a few years? How did this year go according to the plan? And that year was like, what the heck just happened? Because that was not part of my plan at all. And that's when I realized we don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. And that's when I created a plan to scale BNI. And just in the end of December, we passed 10,000 BNI chapters in more than 70 countries around the world.
Amazing. Good for you. Good for all of you. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, my brother in Minnesota just absolutely loves BNI. And well, we have the pleasure of you on our website as a thought leader, and you write for us, and we get the pleasure of access to you and so forth like that. We just love you.
I appreciate that. And last year, during the craziest year I've ever seen, our members passed 16 billion with a B, $16 billion US worth of business during the middle of COVID.
That is amazing.
It's amazing. It's humbling what it has become, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So Chris, I was hoping Chris would ask you about your books, because I absolutely love your books. And Chris, there's how many books do you have now? I haven't even.
I've written or co-authored 26.
Wow. But what about Who's in Your Room?
Yeah, Who's in Your Room? I love that book. It's a short read. You can read the whole book in 2 hours. It's very, very short. That's the book. But I think it's one of the most important books I've written. And here's the concept in 2 minutes or less. Imagine that you live your entire life in one room, and that one room has only one door, and that one door is an enter-only door, so that when people come into your life or into your room, they're there forever. You can never get them out. Now, luckily, this is a metaphor, but if it were true, ladies, would you be more selective about the people that you've let into your life?
After reading that book, I always am.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's what most people say. So here's the thing. I would argue it's, in fact, more than a metaphor. People say to me, no, I can get people out of my life. Okay, you can get them out of your life, but they're not necessarily out of your room. Here's what I mean. I want you to both think of someone that you got out of your life. They were toxic. They were difficult. You didn't want anything to do with them. I'm not going to ask you to name them, so you're safe. But I want you to think of them. Okay? Do you have somebody in mind?
Yeah. Yep.
Now, if you're watching this presentation, I want you to also think of someone that just drove you nuts and you're glad you got them out of your life. Now, I want everyone to think of what it was they did, some of the things they did that just drove you crazy and you didn't want anything to do with them. Do you have something in your mind, ladies?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not going to make you share it, but you got something?
Yeah.
All right. So if they're still in your head, they're still in your room, and they will be for the rest of your life, because the concept of the room starts here and ends here. This is the room. It is all the experiences that happen to you. Dr. Daniel Amen, who we interviewed for the book, said, when you have a relationship with someone, business, personal, professional relationship, their fingerprints are all over your brain for the rest of your life. That experience is part of who you are. And so you want to be really careful about the people you let into your room, because they will impact your life forever. Even if they've gotten you out of your life, they're still in your head.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I know you, in your book, you talk about, being the doorman. And so how do you talk to me about that? Because I'm sitting here thinking about that person and I'm like, yeah, I should have left them in, I don't know what it is, a waiting room or a hallway before I let them in.
Yeah,
So,
on the porch.
because sometimes I feel like I've got someone that's in the room and then I'm like, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to let you in.
Yeah. So your doorman, one of the things we say in the book is you got to hire a doorman. Now, we're not talking about, actually hiring a doorman. By the way, you can call him anything you want. You can call it your bodyguard, your guardian. You can call it anything. We chose doorman. We like the concept of someone standing by the door. And if you're in California, you can call them a door person if you want. That's okay too, whatever you want to call them. So your doorman is your conscious and subconscious mind saying, wait a minute, I don't want this person to get too close to me. And so you have to train your doorman. Now, what do you train them on? Well, what you train them on are your values. So the first thing you have to do is get good with your values. You have to know what your personal values are. I have found that when I ask people, hey, give me your top 6 or 7 personal values, it's like looking at a deer in the headlights. Most people are like, honesty. Great, give me 6 more. And they don't know their own values. So if you don't know and I'm not gonna put you on the spot and ask you your values, but if you don't know your values, you don't know what to train your doorman on. So you got to know your values. In the book, we have an exercise that you can do to figure out what some of your values are. But the truth is, there's so many things online to determine your values. So you got to get good with your values. We're working on a new edition of the book, and I'm going to flip something. We talk about deal breakers after values. I'm going to flip that to the first part. Deal breakers are easy for most people. So this I am going to ask you, ladies. What is a deal breaker in terms of a professional relationship with somebody? What is just something that you won't tolerate in your life on a professional level? Yeah, Chris.
So for me, lack of accountability. People who don't have accountability, that's I have no time for that.
Yep, that's a great one. That's a super deal breaker. And we have found that if you start with your deal breakers, then it's a little easier to move into what your values are. Elizabeth, you had your hands up. It's like class.
Yeah, exactly. Once I hear somebody talk about themselves, referring to themselves by their own name, like if you said Ivan would say this or that, like the whole instead of saying I or whatever, it just makes me. So it raises a huge flag to me that somebody has a huge ego or something. Just something's going on where.
That is interesting. No, that's not one I've ever heard before, but I like it. I think that's an interesting and good deal breaker. So know your deal breakers. Those are easy. Then get good with your values. Those are harder. They take a little more time. And then train your doorman so that before you let people into your life, are their values resonant with yours? By the way, they don't have to be the same values. They just can't be incongruent with yours. They can't be dissonant with yours. They've got to, flow with yours. They've got to be resonant with yours.
That was one of the first things we did, was a giant values check with both of us with Best Ever You. So love
To
values.
make sure that it's a good fit, because
yeah.
if it's not a good fit, it goes wrong. It goes wrong quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so for us, for Elizabeth and I, because we knew we wanted to collaborate and partner together in a business relationship, and our personal relationship just flourished. So I would say naturally. So let me ask you this though, like, how do you evaluate whether you should let someone in your room or not? It's not like Elizabeth and I came to each other, like, honestly, with a clipboard list, and we were like, what are your goals with your business? I mean, you don't meet somebody at, let's say, a networking conference or a elevator or a lunch buffet and go, let me ask you your 17 values and see if we can continue talking. Like, how do you speak to that? How do you evaluate like whether someone should be in your room?
It's a slower process than just, one conversation, but I think you need to have those kinds of conversations. These are some of the things that are important to me in business. I'm curious what's important to you. And, most people don't jump right into doing a business relationship. I'm suggesting that you definitely do not want to jump into doing any kind of business, including a client. There are clients that I've had when I was a management consultant where I was like, I don't want to work with this client anymore. I'm firing them because they just don't have values that are congruent with mine.
Yeah.
And that's okay. As a matter of fact, I have a whole section on the book on how to say no without sounding like a jerk or worse. And I think that's one of the things that you got to learn how to do. You got to learn how to say no without, I don't like to burn bridges. My son was like, just tell people no. Well, okay. I don't like to burn bridges, but I think that you got to learn how to say no to people. And people have a hard time with that. As a matter of fact, that was the number one thing on radio interviews when the book came out that talk show hosts wanted me to talk about, was how do you say no?
We did a whole interview on that. And it's still one of the top downloads on the Best Ever You network. That's a great show. If anybody hasn't listened to that, that's a whole hour of Ivan talking about that one chapter of that book.
It is. And let me give you just one of the how to say no, because there are lots of things, but I love this one. And it's my favorite. What I don't like about it is now that I use it, people go, I read about that in your book. You used that. I'm like, yeah, I did. So here it is. If I said yes to you, I'm afraid I'd let you down. And here's why. And then you tell them why. You don't have the bandwidth, you've got other things that you've got to deal with. And it's what I like about that is you don't even use the word no. If I said yes to you, I'm afraid I'd let you down. And I don't want to let people down. And I have found myself in positions where I was going to let someone down or have to reprioritize the things that were important to me, neither of which were what I wanted to do. So that's a great way to do it. And there's a whole bunch more in the book.
I've used that since I learned that from you during that show, as we've been refining and reorganizing Best Ever You to do some of the things it's doing. I've actually used that sentence, and it is so great because it's not you can't even boundary jump that one.
Yeah, it's hard to. You're right. And by the way, I love writing for you. I appreciate you inviting me to write there, and it's a blast to send you articles every month.
Yeah, and in normal circumstances, we would have all met a million times by now. And it's just this was my year to travel with all the kids in school and all that stuff. And that
didn't work out so well.
No, that didn't work out very well. So, Chris, it's your turn. Sorry.
Okay, but we're keeping our heads up and we're keeping positive spirits about that. And so that was my segue, using the word positive to get into the word negative. So Ivan, what is your best tip? What do you do when you run into negative people? And I don't know if that's the correct term, because I don't want to call someone a negative person, but people that are kind of brutally or whatever.
Lots of negative people.
There are negative people.
Yeah. There are. And you know what I think is really interesting is that negative people don't realize they're negative.
And when you tell them they're negative, they get more negative.
Yeah, I mean, they just say, no, I'm not negative. I'm just telling it like it is. Yeah, you're negative. Everything is negative with you. I think that people like that are toxic. And I certainly don't want toxic people in my room. And there are a couple of things that you can do depending on the situation. Here's two that are real life examples. One is in the book. It is Rick and his mother. His mother was very toxic and very difficult. And every time he got on the phone, he would call her every week and talk to her. And he hung up always upset because she would be bad mouthing his brothers and sisters. And he puts this in the book. So one day he just said, Mom, I love you very much, but I'm finding these calls with you very, very frustrating where you go off talking about my brothers and sisters. And so from now on, when you start going that direction, I'm just going to say, Mom, I love you very much. I'll talk to you at the same time next week. Bye. And I'm going to hang up. And she was like, yeah, whatever. And so next week, he said, they were just a couple of minutes into the conversation and she's going off on one of her brothers or one of his brothers. And he's like, Mom, I love you very much. I'll talk to you next week. Bye. And hung up. Yeah. And then the next week, it took about 10 minutes before she did it. And he said, Mom, I love you very much. I'll talk to you again next week, and hung up. He said that the next 2 years, they spoke every week, and it was the best 2 years of their adult lives together, where they had good conversations, and it wasn't all wine and roses and everything was happy, but she had adult, mature conversations of challenges, not just berating people. And he said it was the best 2 years of his adult life with her. And that's one thing you do. Here's a quick one. And I love this. This is not in the book. It will be in the second edition.
Right.
I had a woman,
preview. We get the sneak preview.
You'll get a sneak preview. I had a woman who said, it's always difficult with family. And we've got one family member that whenever there's a family dinner, she will throw in, she said, she throws in these verbal grenades. Oh. And the whole family gets up in arms and it's a big fight. And she said so many of our events, our family dinners were just turned into a verbal ruckus. And we read this book and we came up with this idea. They said what they decided to do as a family, they met as a family without her. And they said, the next time she throws in one of these grenades that'll start an argument, let's all look at her and go, oh, okay. And turn back and continue our conversation and just not respond. And she said that her sister showed up to a couple more dinners, threw in the grenade. They was like, oh, okay, thanks. And then they went back. And after a couple, she just mostly missed. She didn't come anymore. And when she did, she stopped throwing in the grenades. Wow, that was just brilliant. It takes some willpower, because there were things that she said that were very, very toxic. But it worked. It worked.
That's brilliant. Especially, I'm in the middle of 11 kids and there's like, I don't know how, our family is massive. And things like that will people clear out.
I mean, I'm in a group of 4 kids and we have some tumultuous times and stuff. And your stories sound like just amazing. But I sit here and I'm wondering, I'm like, but what about anger? Like, it's very easy to say. And they just turned and said, oh, okay, and continued. Did either one of those stories with the mom or the family gatherings, did they have to deal with some anger, or were they like fighting?
Well, they were absolutely, what she said was incredibly anger provoking, and they had all agreed that they weren't going to buy into it. And if they didn't buy into it, they wanted to see if it would stop, and it did. And yeah, what she said was it was very toxic. And I think the second time was even worse than the first time when they didn't respond. And then when they didn't respond after the second time, that was it. And so you got to have a lot of willpower to not speak up during those times.
Yeah. Do you, what about if somebody is already in your room who's like that? Like,
yeah, well, in both cases, the mother and the sister were both in the room. And the bottom line here is you set boundaries.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what Rick did. He set a boundary. This is a boundary. When you cross it, this is going to be what happens. And with the other case, it wasn't so much a boundary as it was a method of not reacting. And the method to not react was to just, not just turn from her, look at her, say, oh, wow, okay. And then turn back and go into the conversation. Don't engage. And when you get everyone in agreement and you're all by yourself and you don't get the response you want, you stop coming. And that's what you did.
Yeah. It seems, it's such good advice, because that kind of goes along the lines of like, you can control yourself, but you can't control what they're going to do. So, hey, we're going to all control. Everybody decided to just instantly control what they were going to do. I love that. So that's written down. Thank you for that. Yeah. How about you, Chris? You love that?
Yeah, I think
Love
it's great.
that so much.
One thing is, I think it's a lot easier on the phone because he had that boundary of being able to like physically hang up, right? And in the second example, there's like some camaraderie with the other members of her family there that are like acting with her. I think it
Yeah,
would be maybe a little trickier if you
it'd
were
be harder. Sure. I mean, because, you know, when
one-on-one.
she said something so negative, it'd be easy to go,
Mm. Yeah.
oh, okay. You know, I could just see the facial expressions, but they all agreed, no reaction. The only way this will work is no reaction. And they did it and it worked. And I was
There-
like,
I wonder if that was like a kick under the table chain reaction. You know, like
Probably.
what was the cue? I'm going to kick you,
Probably.
and then anyway, yeah. I want to go all Star Trek on you, but I suppose I can't. Can I? Can I?
Sure,
I
why not?
love the fact.
I don't know if I'll be able to answer it, but
Well,
go
but
on.
I love the fact that you love Star Trek.
I do.
And I love that. I love that for a global conference, because this is, you know, we're serious and we're talking about all these things, but you know, it's so wonderful to have you and get to know you and the things that you love and like. I've seen the wine cellar on Facebook, which is incredible, by the way. But can we go? But can we go all Star Trek for a little
Sure,
bit?
why not?
Yeah, like
Have
why?
you seen the latest episodes on CBS All Access, Picard? Oh,
I-
very good. Very
Yeah.
good.
We've got that. We're going to be doing that. We did Mandalorian first over on the Star Wars front, but why do you love Star Trek so much?
You know, I like the writing, to be honest with you. I mean, they talked about social issues when you go back to the show in the 60s. They talked about social issues that you couldn't really talk about blatantly as well, but you could talk about it with, like, I remember the one episode where they were black on one side, white on the other side. And the other race or ethnicity was black on the other side and white on one side. And they were like, yeah, but you know, they're inferior because they're black on the left side, not black on the right side. And it's like, what? That's just ridiculous. But they were able to deal with diversity issues. They were able to deal with racial issues with something so incredibly obviously stupid that it makes you wonder, why are we having these issues still to this day? So that's one of the things that I like. And the writing, I just thought was, my favorite one was the one with the card and the flute. Do you remember that?
Actually, my husband is who I need here right now. He's got all of them memorized. But I'm sure if I put it on,
the writing was so good in that episode. The bottom line is he lived an entire
because if you
life.
talk about it, I'll know which one it is. I think a little bit better.
The thing with that one is he lived an entire life within 5 minutes.
I don't.
Based on something that happened.
Yeah.
And he came out of this unconsciousness knowing how to play a flute, and he had never played a flute before.
Okay, so when we're done, I'll ask my husband Peter about that one.
It's
He'll be like,
the best episode.
Yeah. He'll want to
Really
call
good.
you up, and he loves all of them. Yeah, we have them actually on DVD, like the entire collection. So
Yeah, I do too.
yeah, all
I
of
do
them.
too.
So I don't have them perfectly memorized though, but yeah, Chris, go ahead. Do you have them, Chris?
I was gonna, that's so great. It's so funny you related to your husband. And Ben and I in 2020, that is what we watched. We started at the beginning and we started watching episodes of that, and then we started using the vernacular in our house, and there was a lot of "make it so" number one.
Yes.
When we're making lunch and things like that, right? So it's just it is a delightful show, and I do the social issues. Yeah, I'm sitting here going, yeah, you know what, you're right about that, Ivan. And I remember us watching them and going, oh, that was pretty cutting edge for those times, and we would strike up conversation about what was happening, but again, using the alien races or the intergalactical human, you know what I mean? Yeah, so really neat stuff. Now I want to go watch some more.
We did that in 2022 with the kids. Like sat them down, they were like, oh, this is so amazing. So all right, thank you for that. We're going back to the summit now. Just a little bit of a break. Thank you. Yeah, back to, well, one of the things that there's an important question to ask you about balance in life.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us the secret to that. Is there such a thing?
Yeah. So, you know, if you've read the book, so you know the answer to this. But when I'm speaking to a large audience, I'll ask the audience, I believe I know the secret to balance, and would you like to hear it? And the audience is like, yeah, because it's mostly business people, entrepreneurs, salespeople. I said, okay, here's the secret to balance. Forget about balance. You'll never have it. And usually you get this big groan, and there's usually somebody right in the front of the audience going, oh, I thought I'd get something good. Okay, I think you'll get something good. But it's not about balance. Because when you're talking about balance, we look at balance like scales, and that our life must be completely in balance, and that our business life has to be in balance with our personal life, which is in balance with our health, which is in balance with our spirituality. And it's,
Look,
oh man,
I feel like I'm juggling.
Well, that's exactly right.
I can't
Life is more of a juggling act than it is a balancing act. And so what I suggest is that it's not about balance, that it's about harmony. And there is a difference. It's more than semantics. There is a difference between harmony and balance. Even the logo, the graphic for harmony, the yin and the yang, are out of balance if you separate them. So when they're separated, they're out of balance. And so we talk in the book about a number of things that you want to do to lead a life of harmony, because my life has not been balanced. I have 2.3 million miles on one airline alone. I traveled a lot before COVID. And so here's at least one or two techniques. If we have time, I'll do two. One is so simple sounding, but not easy. Be here now. Wherever you are, be there. Don't be at work thinking about the fact that you didn't spend time with the family last night. You didn't spend enough time with the family last night. Don't be home.
Can I interrupt you, please?
Yeah.
That is so important right there, because that is why I stayed home with my children. That was my decision, because I felt like I couldn't be present in both places. And that is not exactly what I said to myself, but I felt like I couldn't be present at all. Like I was cut in half. And so I was like, okay, this is going to.
And that's a hard decision to make. You're talking about doing this before COVID, I'm assuming.
Oh no, I'm talking about doing this my kids are 19, 21, 23, and 25. I'm talking about way back when.
You don't have a 25-year-old.
I do have a 25-year-old. Yeah. When I was a working mom, and I was flying around 300,000 miles a year with two small children and a nanny and all this stuff. And it was like, oh my gosh, my nanny was in the hotel room with two small kids, and while I would do a presentation, I just said, you know what, I'm done. And I got it kind of outnumbered.
It's a choice that you need to make. And there's a lot of mostly women who make this decision, who decide to work, and that's fine. But my late wife and I made that decision when we got married, and we were married 31 years before she passed away, and she was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. And
my dedication to one of my very first books was I make the living and she makes the living worthwhile.
Oh, yeah, I saw that you wrote that. I miss her, and I'm sorry. And
as do I.
Yeah, and just so you know, you're on conference here. Her husband passed away as well.
Yeah. My wife. Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris's husband.
Oh, Chris's husband. Oh, Chris, I'm so sorry. Okay, you may laugh. There is a podcast. How long has it been, Chris?
Tell him the story so he knows, because he's.
So at the beginning of 2020, we started thinking we're going to have this fabulous year. And February 26th, he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer that had already metastasized into other organs. And then we were home for 5 months. And the blessing is we had those 5 months, and COVID kept me home and not working and not on the road. And in July, he passed away at 43, just a week short of his 44th birthday. So it was a, terrible, no precursor. He wasn't at an age for screening. There's no family history, all those things. So yeah, he passed away in July. And then now, and during that year, right at the beginning in January, I met Elizabeth. She was there when I got the news. And I was like, no, we're not going to worry about it. He's strong and it's going to work out. And so that's one of the things that really bonded us.
Thought a lot about both of you.
My story is not too dissimilar from that. And so you might appreciate what I'm going to recommend. I started listening to a podcast called Widow We Do Now.
Oh, I like that. I'm writing it down.
It's such a great name. Widow We Do Now. It's run by two young widows. And they let men, there's a private Facebook group. They let men participate. So if you're a widower or a widow, but they want to make sure that it's a legitimate, you're legitimately widowed. And so you have to send a link with the obituary so that you don't get people,
Fair.
Yeah, you
there,
wouldn't want
you know what
There are
some
all
people,
kinds of people. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I have found it very helpful
Good.
for me. And
Thank
my recommendation is listen to 2 podcasts, because the first one I was like, why am I listening to this? It was recommended to me. And I'm like, why am I listening to this? And I'll tell you what, one thing hit me. We're way off subject now.
It's okay.
But
We'll edit that.
my wife could talk. Oh my God, Elizabeth could talk. Elizabeth with an S, not Elizabeth here.
Yeah.
Elizabeth could talk and talk and talk and talk. And the silence is deafening now. And so one of the things is, it's a podcast run by 2 women, and there's a lot of chatter, a lot of talking through their feelings. And so, guys, suck it up, Buttercup. Pay attention.
My favorite saying, suck it up, Buttercup.
It's I have gotten a lot out of it. After I listened to the second one, I thought, okay, I'm in. I'll listen to them, and I've got a lot out of it. I've learned a lot, enough that I'm going to be writing an article, a blog on it. I'm happy to send it to you, Elizabeth, if you want, on dealing with grief.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'd love to do
we
it.
need all the help we can get, because I think I always say that, we're all walking around all the time, and Chris says this too, we're all walking around with something maybe playing in the background that not everybody who meets you right up front is aware of.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really important as we encounter people to be kind and treat each person that we meet with grace and gratitude.
Because you don't know their story.
No idea what's just happened, has happened, or anything.
And one of the best bits of advice that I got in listening to them is that when you're talking to somebody who's experiencing the loss of a spouse, go where they are. Don't try to make it better. Don't say, oh, you're going to be okay. You'll get through this. It'll be difficult. Go where they are, wherever they are. Talk to me about that. How are you feeling? And just go where they are, embrace where they are. And if they have a good day, what's that, Chris?
I'm going to make that into a t-shirt because I don't get that response.
Yeah. And and the worst one, which thank goodness I've never done to anybody, was, and my apologies, Chris, this is an example of what not to do.
Yeah.
You're young, you have time to find somebody else.
Yeah.
It's like,
Gets that a lot.
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And, I've had people on social media saying, do you plan on dating now? It's like, I lost my wife less than 4 months ago. No. And why would you even ask that? And here's the one that really ticked me off.
Yeah.
I have a lot of energy on this.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Somebody wanted something from me and said, it's time to set the grief aside and focus on this problem or issue.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what I said to him. I replied back saying, really?
Out of my room?
I cannot believe you actually said that. You are banned for life from all my social media. And I banned him from every social media platform I had.
Yeah, no, good for you for that, because I have had some pretty appalling things be said to me as well. And I just pick my jaw up and try to be like, and I always.
What do we do now? That's the website for the podcast. And then they have a private Facebook page. They have a public Facebook page, and then they have a private page. I think it's called What Do We Do Now Wives, or Widow Wives of What Do We Do Now.
I'm sure I'll find it in the link.
If you can't find it, Chris, you email me and I'll send you the link.
Okay, thanks, Ivan. I will.
Ivan, what aside from that tip, what has worked for you to be like on a call like this? Because sometimes grief can be so devastating that you don't want to work, you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to. So I'm personally I'm in awe of you guys, because I love you guys. You all know that anyway. But like Chris, I've had days where I've been like, Chris, what do I say to you? And I've asked her, like, what do I say to you? Haven't I, Chris? Like, what do I say? How are you? And I think the best thing is, how are you? How are you? Is there anything I can do for you? And what's interesting, again, listening to these ladies talk, sometimes there really is, especially if you live nearby. And they talked about not just bringing food over, but a neighbor takes the trash cans out for her every week. Yes. She's in British Columbia.
She's got 4 young kids and, you know, it's chaos. Somebody else babysits.
Yeah.
Let me babysit for you. Somebody agreed to babysit. She went out and the woman cleaned her house.
Yeah.
And it was a close friend. And the woman cleaned her house. And I mean, things like that are meaningful and helpful. I think your question was going to be how are we managing, or how are we?
Yeah, it's difficult. And every day doesn't seem to be the same.
It's not. You know what? I love my work. And for me, the work, you know, I took some time off. I took the better part of a week off after she passed away. And then there were just commitments that I had. And I'm the kind of guy that if I got a commitment, I'm going to put my head down. It's one day at a time. But Christmas was right around the corner, Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And so I just took time off. I didn't have commitments around those times. And I probably took at least 2 weeks off to just get my head straight. But the truth is I love what I do and it's a distraction. And so I'm plugging away, but it truly is one day at a time.
I really relate to that because one of the things that came from mine and Elizabeth's meeting and collaboration is the work I did in 2020 with her. It brought me so much joy that when I was home with Ben and I was under lockdown and not going places and not seeing people for his and my safety with the chemo and everything, and then having a joyful career.
Journal. You got to see our journal.
Yeah, that just made so much sense.
And listen, that may not work for everyone.
No, we get it.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That really is okay. You gotta go with what works for you.
Yeah. All right. So out of respect for your time, we're going to go back to the summit just a little bit here and ask you just a couple questions. One is, Chris and I have this incredible yes that we keep talking about. And it's incredible yes is a moment where you said yes to something and it changed your life. Do you have 1 or 2 or 10 of those?
Yeah, my incredible yes, I told you, it was the woman who said, would you help me open up a chapter? And I said, no. And then she said, you know, come on, it's kind of consulting. And I'm like, okay. And I am so glad I said yes to her because as a consultant, I could help maybe 10 companies at a time, at the most. But with BNI, you know, I've got 276,000 members worldwide. 16 billion in business. I feel like I'm making a bigger difference. And so I am so happy that and feel blessed that I said yes to her. And I met my wife in BNI.
That's what for you to say.
It was the best referral of my life. We were married 31 years. And it was the best referral of my life. She was a BNI member.
Yeah, love it. All right, Chris has one more for you.
So our conference always has a theme of the day, and the theme for today is talking about wellness. And so we would love to hear your thoughts, maybe a tip or maybe something to inspire our viewers to be mindful of their wellness. So, or something you do to be mindful of your wellness. So wellness.
So,
92 seconds, go.
Yeah. So Hippocrates, who you take the Hippocratic Oath, one of the quotes from Hippocrates that nobody ever mentions is that he said, let food be your medicine and medicine your food. And what you eat makes a huge difference. I discovered that. I had cancer 9 years ago. Completely changed my diet. You can tell the pre-cancer videos and the post-cancer videos because I changed my diet. My pre-cancer videos are all the ones that look like I'm in a fat suit because I was 45 pounds heavier. And they're still up on YouTube. And then the ones that, I really got control of what I ate, and I have stayed at that same weight for the last 9 years. So I think what you eat is so important for your health. And it's not the only thing, but it's an important piece.
Awesome. Yeah, we couldn't agree more. Elizabeth and I talk about all the different components of wellness in so many of our videos, and the food that fuels you really matters. So hot tips from Dr. Ivan Misner on wellness and his incredible yes with a double whammy. I see that you had 2 incredible yeses wrapped into one. That is just fabulous. We really appreciate you spending your time talking to us about the room and the doorman and how to navigate those values and all of the things you shared with us. What a delightful conversation.
Can you hold your book back up?
Oh yeah, sure.
I love that book.
I'm happy to do it. That's the book, Who's in Your Room. And it really is about the secret to creating your best life. And it's all about the fact that your life is as good as the people you surround yourself with. Mom told us this when we were kids. So we know that. What we've tried to do with the book is give you some actionable things to apply that mom or dad told us when we were kids.
Beautiful. All right, everybody, Dr. Ivan Misner, as you like to be called. You're not so big fan of the doctor part, but you are. So, but anyway, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you being with us.
Elizabeth, Chris, thanks for inviting me.